All right, good afternoon, everyone. It's just after 3 o'clock Eastern Time, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you for joining us on a Friday afternoon. My name is Phil Valley. I'm a Senior Vice President with Vesta Partners here in North America. And again, thanks for joining us late on a Friday afternoon. Next slide, please. So real quickly, we'll go through some agenda items and get some introductions out of the way, and then we'll quickly move into the content of the presentation. The purpose of this webinar today is to review SAP PPM and how to utilize PPM to set up capital spend programs, and that's both for immediate spend and planned spend into the future. Throughout this presentation, we're going to be leveraging some lessons learned from previous customers and some common pain points, so our presenters will be pointing those out as we move along. And you can see the other outline agenda items here as well. We'll spend a significant amount of time at the end of the presentation going through a live system demonstration, which should be pretty valuable. So we'll, as you can see in the agenda here, we'll touch on some key drivers and opportunities and some goals of a PPM project as well. Next slide, please. So very quickly, for those that aren't familiar with Vesta Partners, Vesta is a global provider of asset management services. This includes SAP EAM, work processes, technical services, industry solutions, and also software products. Our headquarters is in Stamford, Connecticut. We also have offices in Europe and the Middle East, as well as in the Asia-Pacific region. SAP is our exclusive focus for enabling asset management solutions. We don't work with any other maintenance management systems. SAP is our exclusive focus. I introduced myself earlier. Also joining me on the call today as presenters are Wayne Messervy and Sergey Medved. Wayne and Sergey are both principal consultants at Vesta Partners. And at this point, I'm going to hand it over to Wayne to begin the presentation.
Next slide, please. Okay, so at any point in the during the webinar, if enabled that you can actually ask questions there. Those will be gathered during the webinar, and we'll endeavour to answer as many as we can during the questions and answers session at the end. So what I've done is just added in a bit of talking around some of the pain points that we've heard within organisations as we've gone through, and I've just picked out some key ones to actually move through. So things like pain points around competing processes and models and managing and reporting projects. Organisations do struggle with having some consistency around their process and models. Different parts of the business are using different models, and it just leads to a lot of information overload and confusion around things like funding and decision taking around checkpoints. Another one being competing tool sets and systems, leading to omissions and duplication of data. I guess we've all seen where businesses have used their own in-house developments, and particularly we can end up with a lot of confusion and difficulty around where multiple parts of the business are using their own systems but trying to report a single project. Who actually then ends up reporting the project financials. So yeah, some struggles around there. Can I have the next slide, please? Another pain point that we hear a lot of is sort of a lack of visioning and direction on where an organisation is going to be in the next 10 years or so. So some organisations do struggle with that alignment and being able to get visibility on some of the direction setting by the executive. The projects need to be contributing to at least one or multiple of these strategies and be able to be measurable and accountable to them. Without this sort of vision, then what's the purpose of the project? They're just consuming a lot of resources without too much sort of tangible payback there. Okay. Next slide, please. I guess some of the challenges I think that are faced by organisations out there around what they need to do around portfolio management. There's a complete lack of understanding about what is portfolio management. Organisations have a difficulty in conceptualizing what it is to actually manage a body of work. They struggle with the visibility and the control of what they're doing now, but also having that view around what it is that we want to do into the future. very good at managing the here and now projects, but I suppose that visioning and that planning for the future. I've tended to find that change management is also a key component of any PPM project, and those projects which have had change management have gone far more successfully than those that haven't. Governance policies, it's one of the key drivers around any PPM implementation. It forms a framework of which all the proposals of work that need to be evaluated and pass through the portfolio funnel. The prioritisation of that work also needs to follow some sort of consistent format or process so that it's measured by the same sort of yardstick. Different methodologies and review processes can lead to quite unbalanced and biased portfolio managers. Project managers will always champion their own work, but where does it actually fit in terms of the whole portfolio? That can be a struggle. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, another challenge I guess I've heard a lot of is inconsistency of planning approaches around the levels of data, leading to a lot of time-consuming reconciliation and reworks of that information across multiple systems. So we've all heard the whole being pulled together with an Excel sort of spreadsheet. So I guess bringing a PPM sort of system in there will allow that data to be gathered under one umbrella and reported sort of consistently. Okay, we move to the next slide, please. Okay, some of the drivers for a PPM project for an organisation out there, single integrated solution. I mean, how many times have we heard that? I think all organisations strive to have that, one single integrated view of their data, their projects, and then the complete body of work that they're currently engaged in and where they want to move in the future. I think more and more pressure is now coming from, regulatory bodies on visibility of outputs for the resources that have been invested, and it's even more important now to have these closed-loop systems rather than a patchwork of legacy solutions with Excel tying it all together. Governance models to ensure that projects are all rated on consistent and measurable metrics. Support of governance models is key to the success of the management of any portfolio. This model allows for collection of all the key performance indicators and metrics within the portfolio work, and it may differ based on the different types of work out there. For example, discrete projects will all be about schedule, time, performance, adherence to budget, whereas bulk program pieces of work probably more focused on metrics such as units of performance achieved. Just in the electricity space where I've been doing a lot of work, it's things like number of poles that have been replaced or miles of pipeline inspection that might have been undertaken. Can we go to the next slide, please? Okay, regulatory and statutory compliance to ensure continued funding and support by external agencies. A lot more focus is now being placed by these external organisations. I used the example before of the electricity regulators. Needing to determine outputs and outcomes of the investment. What the ability to accurately capture and report on all this information is so critical. I know in Australia where I've been doing quite a bit of work, there in the electricity market there's now a very extensive set of reporting requirements around what is the regulator actually funding, so down to metrics like the types of poles being replaced, at what frequency, what sort of deficits or defects are there on the pole, and how is this all contributing to overall service delivery to customers. A PPM solution can be designed with that sort of reporting rigor in mind to ensure that that the correct type of metrics are captured and reported to all the appropriate levels within the organisation. Can I have a next slide, please? Okay, some of the opportunities offered by implementing PPM, obviously that single integrated solution again, it just comes up every time, providing a view or an overlay for the organisation so they can look across and have that complete visibility of where are they now and where actually they're heading to, even out as far as 20 years, giving them that sort of view. It provides the opportunity to get rid of all of those extra systems, the cost of ownership of maintaining all these other systems, as opposed to bringing in a single sort of strategic visioning tool that's sitting across their base ERP system. Very, very valuable. Providing the ability to prioritize their project proposals or concepts, across a consistent set of evaluation criteria, rather than, political and emotional allegiances that may exist out there. So often decisions around projects can be driven by these other, emotional judgments, whereas project managers, they all believe that their project's the most important, so therefore, that's the one that needs to move ahead. But applying a consistent process around the sort of selection and performance governance is just so key, and just ensures that the firm's actually able to deliver the right sort of projects in the right sort of manner. Okay, next slide, please. Consistent forum for evaluation of scarce resources to projects and better aligned to strategic goals. Again, I suppose one of the tangible benefits that I saw come out of one implementation I was involved in was around the creation or the formation of a resourcing review board that met on a bi-weekly sort of basis to evaluate all the work that wanted access to particularly scarce skill sets or resource sets within an organisation. It's not only about bringing that visibility out there, but also put in a place to actually use some of the review functionality within PPM, so that people could go in and rank and rate projects that were competing for these resources, and then the most appropriate decisions could be made by a governance review board around making sure that a more holistic view was taken, where projects maybe had dependencies on other projects, and were holding up much larger pieces of work. All of that could be taken into account. Okay, can I have the next slide, please? Some of the goals of undertaking a PPM project, creation of a set of processes that will support the planning, selection, prioritisation, execution, and reporting of all projects within that framework. I believe that the overall goal of implementing a solution like PPM, it's about bringing order to the chaos that reigns in organisations around deciding what sort of work to do, in which order, with what outcomes, and to whom it should all be reported. Deciding on what type of work that an organisation is actually engaged in. Not just a divisional split, but the very nature of the work. So, what's the fundamentals of the work that they're doing? What are the steps involved? The reporting hierarchies, the PPM bucket structure that needs to be designed. What are the levels of information that are required? Who are the audiences? The different types of solution. All very, very important choices that need to be taken. The portfolio needs to be viewed in terms of it's a life cycle. It's the saying goes from cradle to grave, and PPM can provide, I think, the most benefit up front in terms of giving clear visibility for forward capital planning. It's also a key role in the recognition of the in-flight project performance, measurement of metrics, and then that post go-live benefits realisation, a step that's quite often sort of missed. All of that can be catered for using our PPM system. Can I have the next slide, please? Okay. One more, providing an integrated near real-time picture of project performance. So, PPM allows all the levels of the organisation to access this information that's key to their decision making. This may be different levels across different time frames, but it brings together all of these aspects of work that are being carried out. So I think one of the strengths of the SAP PPM solution, to me, is the versatility of some of the reporting presentation layers. Whether it's just a simple dashboard that can be sorted and filtered and used as I suppose the window to a drill down mechanism to get into those at-risk pieces of work, to the much more complex sort of analytical reporting tools, using some of the the latest business objects, Celsius dashboards, and some of the SAP Lumira, visual sort of representation of data. I know my colleague Sergey is going to be presenting some of those options for you to look at in the coming minutes. Can I have the next slide, please? Okay, for those people that may not be as familiar with PPM in terms of how it's architected, so it's not actually sitting in the core ECC solution. It is its own suite that is sitting in its own logical system above the ECC system, and it's operating up there, but it's actually gathering information, passing information backwards and forwards with the ECC system. So, it's pulling data out of the human capital side. It's pulling, obviously, big portion of its data out of project systems, but also out of the finance area, and also can be, implemented in such a way that it's actually interacting with third-party project management tools like Microsoft Project or Primavera P6. And I guess all that data then pushed to a warehouse, business warehouse for reporting layers. Can you have the next slide, please? Okay, I spoke briefly about the portfolio funnel. So it's all about the capturing of all of that information up front, and then allowing it to pass through various filters or various layers, so that not everything that gets dreamed up or gets proposed will make it through. It does actually have to run through a number of channels or filters within the organisation, so that the most appropriate work comes all the way down, is funded, and then undertaken. Okay, can I have the next slide, please? Okay, just a very, very high representation in terms of how the system is actually integrating with project systems out there. We're creating items in the portfolio, we're undertaking sort of high levels of planning, and then from there we can launch a project structure that's dynamically linked to our item. All of that information that we would, and the data that we'd normally capture on our project, can then be passed backwards and forwards through to our item using the decision flow management and that. So it is really an interplay between the two solutions in terms of providing us with all of that key information up to the users that need it. Can I have the next slide, please? Okay, we'll now move on to the system demonstration, which I guess is the part that most people actually want to see. So I'll hand over to my colleague Sergey now, who will talk through some of the reporting options and some of the portfolio management processes that we've actually got out there. Okay, over to you, Sergey.
All right, thank you, Wayne. Let me share my screen real quick. Okay. Alright, so you guys should see my screen by now. Let's navigate into the PPM software. We can log generally into PPM using SAP NetWeaver Business Client that I'm assuming some of you are familiar with. But in addition to that, PPM itself can be run within a browser. It can be a direct URL, that's the case we are using, or it can also be embedded into your or your client's corporate portal. So as you can see on the top, there are several tabs on the screen, and all those tabs are actually controlled by the back-end SAP authorizations. And what you can see today mostly are SAP delivered roles, such as portfolio management, project resource management, and administration. And also we have a reporting dashboard role that's actually a custom one that we use at Vesta Partners. On the left side, generally, you see various links to objects and actions in PPM as we go through the screens. On the right side, we see the information, object information, dashboards, and so on. Just a high-level overview of the layout of PPM. So first thing you can see on my reporting dashboard is a reporting launchpad. This launchpad lists a number of portfolio reports. It's delivered by SAP out of the box. As Wayne had mentioned, SAP PPM basically offers various reporting capabilities, and including dashboards, which we'll see a bit later. It offers a number of built-in charts and analytics tools, such as SAP's Business Context Viewer, BCV, as well as Business Objects Explorer. In addition to that, what's very important, SAP PPM or SAP provides standard PPM BI content that can be activated in your SAP BW system. And content comes with different cubes, queries, extractors, and so on. And there's a number of templates that are actually those reports that you see here on this launchpad. Those are all SAP delivered templates that come with the BI content. So just quickly, we'll go through some of them. As you can see, there is a number of, a couple of cost analysis templates that are allowing you to compare actual and planned costs by portfolio items, navigate into the details. There is financial and capacity planning, as you can see here. very similar reports giving you insight into a long-term financial plan, capacity plan broken down by plan periods. On the right-hand side, you see you can look at your strategic portfolio alignment, look at items or project risk, cost, value, and so on. And during the webinar, during the demo today, you'll see that PPM supports project versioning, so we can actually create project baselines in different versions. And of course, there are a few SAP delivered, again, reports or templates that allow version analysis and so on. And again, just to make sure it's clear, we're looking at portfolio management reports and data today, and although there is also a robust project management side of PPM with its own reporting and so on, so which may be a part of a separate webinar eventually. So as an example of the reports that we have, I'd like to play a role of maybe a portfolio manager and look at the financial planning by timeline report, maybe item or bucket planning. So you can launch the reports again directly from SAP Launchpad, or like in my case, you can add a quick link to maybe on the left-hand side. So if I click on the report, it should launch. Let me track this down. And for those of you who are not familiar with BW, SAP BW, that's a typical BW query layout. You see a number of free characteristics on the left that can be added to columns and rows, and to change the report layout. And the resultant data, of course, can be filtered. If I go into certain characteristics like my item ID, I can filter, change properties and how the data is displayed and what. And using my characteristics, and I can create different layouts, and I can save the layouts, of course open existing ones. I can display data in a table view or in graphical view. Layouts can be emailed or sent to people, of course printed and exported to Excel. In my case, since I'm looking at portfolio items and broken down, financial planning broken down by a fiscal year, as a portfolio manager, again, let's say I'd like to look at the financial data broken down by month. So in this case, I'll just take one of the free characteristics and drag it into the columns area. And now, as you can see, the layout of the data has changed. So now the data is broken down by month. And again, this is an SAP delivered query, and many customers choose to build custom reports, which is quite common. And since the content is there in the BW system, it's relatively easy to do. And of course, since the content is there, customers also can use different technologies or tools provided by SAP for reporting. Includes, as Wayne mentioned earlier, WABI reports, Crystal reports, different flavors of business objects, or Excelsius dashboards. So in my case, for this particular demo, I'm not going to show all of them, of course, but as a portfolio manager, I'll use one of the recent additions to the SAP software family. It's SAP Lumira. And the recent versions of SAP Lumira can be connected to SAP BW datasets. So this way, customers, of course, just can create easy, sophisticated, good-looking reports and analysis, which we did in our case. So as a portfolio manager, I'll first go and take a look at my portfolio financial planning. The system's going to take me to my Lumira report, and it may take a little bit to load from the cloud. And as you can see here, it's a very simple report showing financial plan data broken down by buckets and items. So I have my long-term plan values on y-axis and my buckets on x-axis. And on the right side, as anywhere in Lumira, I can add multiple filters. Again, this is something that we built for the demo. So using filters, I can maybe select different particular buckets that I want to take a look at, and particular categories or subcategories of projects, and information and filter to a particular year, for example. And on the second page of this report, very similar information, but what I have here is a comparison between planned and actual cost, which may be more typical, applicable to many of portfolio managers. And again, I can use different filters. As you can see, they're slightly different from the filters on the previous page. Again, that's just the report configuration. And to do deeper analysis, I can go into this exploration mode and drill down into the bucket data. For example, I see that this distribution zone substations replacement actual cost, I'm assuming you guys can see the legend, actual cost is way over my planned cost, so I can just select my bucket and drill down into the item to understand what's going on the item or project level. And again, here I can see that of all my projects in the bucket, just one is within the budget or within the planned cost, and all of them are over budget. So just very high level, easy to run reporting in PPM using Lumira. In addition to financial planning that we saw, we can also build reports using portfolio or project attributes. For example, this report shows our portfolio risk to reward analysis, and again, I'm looking at the internal rate of return and my planned cost projects of the highest risk. It's showing me the top 10 projects. And what's interesting, again, here I can just do a dynamic analysis without needing to go to Excel or complex calculations. I can, right from here, I can see that, generally our budget approved projects, or basically projects that we approve, have a relatively high risk and high internal rate of return when compared to projects that we decline that have a way lower risk and lower rate of return. And it just shows you all different kinds of reports that we can build, in Lumira using the BW content that's available. And again, you can drill into the reports as needed. So not only, of course, not only the financial planning or portfolio attributes we can use, we can build different charts, for example, expected commercial value information or whatnot, or even a high-level detailed financial planning report. Again, I may look at my Vesta utility, a complete portfolio, and, for example, go into my score and subcategory and analyze my projects based on status and the type of work that I'm doing and what the risks are, and again get some idea of what kind of projects we're actually doing. Imagine if you have several hundreds or even thousands of projects in your portfolio that are managed across multiple years. This kind of reporting is very powerful, and you can understand if your portfolio goals and risks are aligned with your portfolio strategy. So you've seen by now, I'm assuming, some of the portfolio level reports. But again, one of the questions we often hear from clients is, well, this is all portfolio level. Now, what happens at the lower level if I'm a manager responsible for just a certain line of business? Well, if I'm a manager and I manage the electricity distribution line of business only, I created just quickly an example of a report that you can just filter or build for a particular line of business. And in this case, again, we're looking at just the data for the electricity distribution, very high level. We're looking at our actual cost broken down by capital expenditure and operational expenditure. And if I go into analysis, there's anywhere, and I can drill down into from my annual values to my quarterly values to, of course, my monthly values, and get the idea about what's going on all the way into the project or item level. And not only, of course, actual cost, but it can be broken down by plan versus actual versus commitments, and my budget and planned cost, and so on. So with that being said, let's take a look at the data in my portfolio. So looked at some of the reports. and I'll navigate using the top-level navigation to a portfolio management role. And here you can see again I'm going into a portfolio structure menu, navigation menu. So for the webinar, we're using Vesta Utility Portfolio, and underneath the portfolio there's a bucket structure that we'll talk about in a second. If I navigate to the list of my portfolios, you can see that PPM actually supports multiple portfolios at the same time, so you can manage more than just one portfolio in a single system. And portfolio generally determines the work that you want to do, your financial and capacity settings, your authorizations, controls, workflows, type of work, and so on. In my Vesta Utility Portfolio, I have a few top-level buckets, as you can see, and a set of underlying buckets or children for each of them. And buckets really in PPM, SAP PPM world, are more like, I like the comparison that Wayne uses. It's Microsoft Windows Explorer folders, right, where you put your files into different folders. So if we drill down into to the lowest level bucket, say I'll go down the electricity business distribution meters path. The lowest level bucket is where we actually eventually create projects or ideas, and the hierarchy, of course, can vary depending on your client. Sometimes people or clients choose hierarchy that represents business groups or work that is being done. Sometimes it's the org structure hierarchy. Sometimes it's structured by the types of work. In case of our Vesta utility, of course, as you can see, we've selected a single portfolio and multiple lines of business within the same portfolio, but again, you may just choose to split it into different portfolios depending on the business requirements. So let's navigate. I'll open my top-level portfolio bucket, the Vesta Super Utility, and you can see a number of key attributes here that define this portfolio and this bucket. So most of the attributes are standard. For example, of course, name and description and status, but some of them are custom in a way that they have been configured and added to the screen, but they're not part of standard delivery. So, for example, everything under ownership and control, such as line of business and the bucket owner, sponsor, and division, those are fields that we've added in addition to what was delivered by SAP. On my financial and capacity planning information tab, I can define my currency for my portfolio. I can define capacity units, so that I'm going to be planning capacity in person days. My start and finish dates for demand and financial planning. In this case, we're looking at planning the portfolio between 2014 and 2020. And my financial capacity breakdown is annual. Of course, there are other options, and this is completely configurable, but for our portfolio, we prefer to do planning on an annual basis. Looking at the apologize for that. Okay, so let's go to my financial planning for this portfolio, and on this screen, this is very interesting and important to understand. This is financial planning of the portfolio, and on the left-hand side in this column, you see a list of financial planning views. So financial views used to group cost based on value type or cost version. For example, in my case, you can see that I have a portfolio bucket budget, a top-down budget that I push from my portfolio level down to the project level. And at the same time, I have other financial views such as actual cost, which is an actual cost collected from the project level and rolled up all the way here to the portfolio top level. So the system can work in both directions, top down and bottom up. And for each of the financial views, next level, we can have categories and groups, or groups and subgroups. In my case, for my high-level bucket budget, I have capital, operational expenditure. And again, since I'm managing this top-level budget on my bucket, I maintained 12 to $15 million preliminary budget for the next few years for CapEx and some number for operational expenditure. And you can see while my top-down budget budget financial view is editable, if I navigate, for example, into my financial estimate, that's the project forecast view, I'm assuming you can see the difference that these fields are actually non-editable. They're display only. And the reason why, because this view represents the financial planning roll-up from all project 50% forecast estimates of all projects underneath this portfolio all the way to the bucket, so that I can compare how my estimates are aligned with my total budget approved, my maybe actual cost, my commitments, my planned cost, and of course my top level budget. And here, as you can see, again, we set our currency as US dollars, but right here I can also toggle between different currencies to display data, say in Australian dollars, and PPM will actually use current exchange rate to display the values in different currencies. And I can also run some very high-level charts or reporting data that's completely configurable. In this case, maybe I'll take a look at my budget versus top budget versus budget roll-up versus actual cost. And, I don't see some actual cost, but just to give you the idea of some of the built-in reports in PPM. If I close my top level, if I close my bucket details, in addition to the standard portfolio hierarchy, we can also create multiple classification hierarchies. So for our Vesta utility portfolio, we've assigned two hierarchies. One is classification hierarchies. One is geographical or geolocation hierarchy, and the other is an asset class hierarchy. And that's something new in PPM version 5. And actually, we are demoing version 6 right now, but something from version 5 and 6. Classification hierarchies basically allow you to assign ideas or projects to multiple nodes at the same time and eventually split the financial or capacity planning information between the nodes. So how it works, I may have a project or an idea that's a power generation project from my previous portfolio structure hierarchy, but at the same time it can be assigned to network improvement, and it falls into safety involvement and maybe improving reliability work as well. And I can split my cost between those different buckets in certain proportion, and we'll see that during when we look at the projects. So as a portfolio manager, I'll go to my item dashboard, and just real quick again, this is my item dashboard. You can use different functions here, very flexible. You can, of course, filter, sort in different orders. You can drag and drop, columns, and add different fields and columns. And as you add them, you can save configurations or your own views, and the views can be user-specific or system-wide, saved system-wide. And so if I switch between different views, they're all my personal views that I can go and look at the data and information in different ways. And right from here, you can also select multiple projects, and you can create projects. You can run some of the basic reports, but also you can use SAP Business Object Explorer, which we will not do today, but to analyze the data, as well as the multi-project monitor to build a Gantt chart. So if I go back to my portfolio, and I'll look at one of the projects. Let's say I'd like to see a project that's in construction phase. So I'll filter by the construction phase, and I see just one project. Okay, if we navigate to this project, we'll go to the project details. A lot of data here. If we focus first on the top side of the screen in the header area, we see a number of boxes here which we call decision points. So decision points really represent typical stage gate process for this project. And this project is in construction phase. You can see the icon is slightly different. And 3 previous decision points or gates have been approved and completed. And this project has been created under the distribution zone substations replacement bucket. And you can see how it all rolls up all the way to the Vesta utility portfolio. That means that project cost, plant values, budget data, and all other information can be rolled up all the way to the portfolio level right from here. So if we look at our phases and decisions tab, as I mentioned earlier, we have 6 decision points here. Construction is active. For each of the decision points, we have a set of dates. We have forecasted and planned dates. If I scroll to the right, we have decision dates, which is when the decision is expected to be made, or when the decision point is expected to be completed. And for each of those decision points, if we use project management tool with the portfolio management, we can link decision points to project phases, network elements, or WBS elements, for example, in SAP Project System or in project management module or side of part of PPM. And in this particular case, we actually, going forward, we have a connection to PS project. And whenever you do work, or since the objects are linked, PPM can synchronize object information, whether it's the dates for the decision points or statuses or even authorizations. So for example, as a portfolio manager, I will not need to go to a detailed maybe task level in Primavera P6 or MS Project or Project System to get the most recent high-level schedule information about my portfolio or projects. I can just get all that straight from the dashboard in PPM, or I can open the project or item from the dashboard and look at the phases right here and drill into the details if I need to. For each of the new projects, whenever we create a new project, we have to select a type. As you can see here, it's a utility business initiated project, and the type really drives the stage gate functionality, the workflows of the project, the number and the types of the decision points, as well as some attributes and statuses. So of course, the small project work or emergency project types will have different sets of decision points or stages and gates. And when the project is created, the system can either create a project, so when a new ID or item is created, the system can create or can be configured to create a new project, say in SAP Project System or in PPM using, for example, a template. In my case, I have a few, well, just one template created. Or the system can be configured to create a project later when maybe a certain decision point is approved, maybe a project is commissioned, or a certain status is set on the project, and we'll look at that in a few minutes, a few moments. So again, a number of standard attributes provided by SAP, but what I wanted to focus on are a few configured or custom added fields to the screen. So we've added some of the asset maintenance fields, the functional location, maintenance plan, and notification number. They've been configured to link our projects or capital projects to some asset management objects in SAP, and we also have a custom budget status field that we use to to define whether a project has been approved or not. Just briefly going through additional information, we can assign questionnaires to the projects where it's just a set of questions that you can use to do basically quantitative and qualitative assessment of the project. We have a few questions for probability of technical success and a few for assessed risk. Those questionnaires are assigned per your portfolio, per your bucket level, so you can use different sets of questions to assess projects in, say, power generation and maybe fossil and nuclear, for example, power generation. And in the end, we can also use different scoring models to look at our maybe our, like in my case, we're looking at the 2 questionnaires, but we can also add different project KPIs, financial information, and come up with a certain score, overall score of our project using this information. Projects can be assigned to different categories. You saw some of those attributes used in reporting, such as subcategory, I think. As I mentioned earlier, our project is assigned, it's a part of the electricity business, electricity distribution, but it's also assigned to 2 asset class hierarchy buckets. One is the improving reliability and the other is safety improvement, and it's a 7-to-3 breakdown that will be used when we do cost analysis. In financial planning, we also have certain financial KPIs. What you see right now, those are all delivered by SAP, but of course they can be, the logic can be modified, the fields can be made hidden and whatnot. For the sake of time, I think I'm gonna skip some of the advanced features of portfolio management, but just wanted to mention that in addition to capturing the attributes, we can also have multiple long text fields. Currently we have just 2 for current issues and customer needs, but you can do your risk management here for projects and have just all kinds of long text fields here, as well as utilize document management concept where we can check in documents, manage different statuses, and even add URLs, for example, and use workflows to actually send documents for approvals if need to. So if we go to financial planning of the project, it will look very similar to that of the bucket, except for, or the portfolio, except for here, as you can see, there's no top down budget distribution, because this is just an actual project. However, here we can navigate into my 50% accurate forecast, and I can actually manage my forecast on this portfolio level, or I'm sorry, this project level. And while my 50% forecast or estimate is broken down just into 2 categories, capital and operational expenditure, if I maybe go into my 90% accurate estimate, you can see that we can engage different cost element groups for that and break the cost down into a more detailed level, as well as maybe my actual cost, which will still be, oops, apologize for that, which will still be display only, as you can see, because this is all rolled up from my project in PS. If I close this screen, I do know that my project, my item in PPM is linked to a PS project, and directly from here I can even run standard or custom PS reports, say CJ30, CJ40, and all other reports directly in SAP, or just maybe open the CJ20N and look at my project and how it's what's going on with the project. So with that, I'll close this project, and just real quick, I wanted to show you how we actually do the scoring of the analysis of the portfolio. In PPM, we use this object. It's called a review. So I've created a review for my Q1 project review, and it's just you know, it's an object that collects the projects, and I've added, out of my hundreds of projects, I added just 32 projects that I think have been nominated for budget review or budget proposal. And using a scoreboard, again, I can just use standard, you know, dashboard and look at the data and the icons. But I can also go, I can also go to my scoreboard, and as we used scoring model and questionnaires on the project level, right, I can also apply a scoring model to all projects at the same time in my review or in my portfolio. And again, those are all configurable, so based on a certain scoring model, I can define you know, what scores the projects get and select projects based on the score, of course. And in addition to that, we can do a what-if scenario planning in PPM. So in PPM, we can create different types of versions of projects. We can create snapshots that are more of a kind of baseline, versions. But we can create simulations. Those are projects, project copies that you can play with the data, with the attributes, and without affecting your actual operational project. So in my review, I've created, in my review, I created this what-if scenario. What if the interest rate changes by 34 basis points, right? It's a planning scenario, and for all of my projects, again, the system, what it does, it creates a simulation for each of the projects in the review, and now I can apply, again, one of the scoring models as earlier, and as you can see, hopefully you can, my data, my, say, expected commercial value may change, as well as my total score may change. For example, my design work for Zone Sub-Program project, there's the original project with the score 20 and 184,000 expected commercial value. Now, if the interest rate goes up, the expected commercial value, oddly enough, goes up too for this project. However, the risk goes up as well. So you can use different kinds of scoring models and apply different models for different projects and do very sophisticated portfolio analysis and planning. In my case, again, real quick, I'll go and pick one of the projects that I have that is pending the approval, right? I can go maybe into the filter on the dashboard or look at my review, but in my case actually know which one I want to nominate for approval. So I'll pick this project. If we actually look at the budget status, it says that it's 0 is planned and there's some actual amount already charged to the project, and that's why my project is not is red, and it's a red status. So I'll look at my project, and what I'm actually looking at, I can see that, okay, budget is proposed. I can print, generally, of course, I would go and validate all the information, look at the financial planning, but in this case, just to save time, I'm assuming that all the data is correct, and believe me, it is. And I'll just print a fact sheet for the project. Using multiple templates, I can generate a PDF document that I can, for example, take with me to a meeting, to a review, or email to somebody explaining what's going on with the project and maybe nominating it for approval. So let's imagine I took this project to a meeting and everybody agrees that it should be sent to the proposed for an approval. So I'll go to my portfolio selection decision point, and given that I've done some action with the project, I'll change the status of the project. I'll set it for ready for decision. So what's going to happen, the system will send or generate a workflow to me and Wayne, since we are a person responsible for this particular case, portfolio selection, asking us to approve the project. Again, this is configurable, typical SAP workflows, so you can create very specified, custom workflows and whatnot, but in our case, we're just using standard out-of-the-box workflows, and as I said, save. The system will just set the status of the decision point as waiting for for ready for decision. So now, as I'm one of the approvers, I probably will receive the email shortly asking to approve the project, and I can log into PPM and approve the project, or user URL, for example, in the email, navigate to my workflow dashboard and approve the project from there. But what I actually wanted to show today, there is another way to do that, and it's called, when you refresh the screen, I'm not sure if it's timed out on me or not, it's called SAP Fiori. So I don't know how many of you are familiar with that, but SAP released few Fiori apps for PPM, Portfolio and Project Management. One of them is actually the decision point approval. So you can run Fiori. It's a mobile app. Let's say it's not really an app, but you can run it through your mobile device, whether it's iPad or the phone, or even on a computer like I do right now. It's very flexible, user-friendly. So I ran the approval, decision point approval as a manager, and I see a few decision points pending approval, and I think this one is the one that we sent just now. it's already 6 days overdue. I can look at the information high level. I can add some notes if I wish to. I can add attachments if I'd like to, and I can, of course, approve or reject the project, again, if I decide that I want to approve or reject. And real quick, before we end, a few more apps that you can use. You can also use Fiori to create portfolio ideas or proposals from your mobile device, such as here, or maybe your iPad. I click on create new one, and the system is asking me in which portfolio I'd like to create the idea, and I can provide basically high-level information. And also, as a portfolio manager, I can even look at my portfolio and what's going on there, and go into my Imperial Highway construction or upgrade project and look at the details and what's going on, and also go and edit the data. Now, we have just a few minutes left, so with that, I'll give it back to Phil for the Q&A session.
Thank you, Sergey. Good job. We've had a couple questions come in, and you can continue to type questions here during this period before we conclude the webinar. The first question that came in, Wayne, I'll throw it over to you since we'll let Sergey catch his breath here. The first question is, how easily can an existing PMO process be fit into a PPM implementation? So Wayne, can you answer that, please?
Sure. I would say very easily. I've, on a number of implementations now, sat down with the PMO team, worked through what is their gating process, who's involved, what sort of decisions do they go through, where does a project move forward, is there anything like it needs to be a majority of people agree, is it what happens under budgetary circumstances, what happens under risk type circumstances. All of that just gets mapped out and can be relatively easily built into any sort of implementation, and even different ones can be applied to an implementation for different types of pieces of work. So the gating process around it is what I would call a discrete project, or a project in its own right, can be completely different to that of a program of work. So yeah, I would say it's very, very easy, very possible to do.
Okay, thanks, Wayne. And I think I'll throw this one to you as well, because you touched on it earlier when you showed a slide around the architecture. The question is, can you use PPM with Primavera P6? So could you talk about that integration between PPM and P6, please? Sure.
So worked on that with a couple of different clients where they wanted to, or particularly in a case where they had they were working with external parties like third-party engineering, construction type people, and they actually wanted to manage things down in P6 from a task-based view. So obviously P6 is very powerful, holds a lot of data. PPM is operating at much more of a summary level, so I know what there was a little bit of enhancement work that sort of went on there, and a few not modifications, but additions that were added to the system to just summarize the data up from P6 to pass back through to PPM. So yeah, all possible. I mean, it's a standard interfaceable selection that's provided there by SAP.
Okay, thank you, Wayne. Sergey, I'll give you this question. It is, can an organization use PPM without using SAP as a back-end system?
Yes, absolutely. You can use portfolio management side without SAP backend. You can also use project management side together or separately from portfolio management, and you do not have to have SAP backend for that.
Okay, thanks, Sergey. I think that does it. About does it for the questions, unless I see any other ones come in here. I'd just like to thank everyone for your attendance, for joining us late on a Friday afternoon. We will be posting this slide deck and a recording of the presentation on the Vesta website in the coming days. So I believe there will be a notification that will go out for that. And beyond that, if you'd like to have any questions answered or would like to contact Vesta, we've included a email address here that you can see on the screen, and again, the slide deck will be available on the Vesta website in the coming days. So again, thank you for joining us on this webinar, and I hope everyone has a safe weekend, and look forward to hearing from you in the near future. Thank you.